by your Spirit, O God, let your good news echo in every heart. Amen. Please be seated. Today, on the last day of the Christmas season, the 12th day of Christmas, instead of drummers drumming, we celebrate the wise men coming to visit Mary, Joseph, and the baby in Bethlehem. We call these wise men, we call these magi kings. We also call them wise. But the Gospel of Matthew uses neither of those words. The Gospel of Matthew calls them magi. That is, they were astrologers, scholars who spent their days studying ancient texts, gazing at the heavens, and recording what they saw there. These men were knowledgeable, to be sure, but why do we call them wise? The great British journalist Miles Kington is famous for saying that knowledge is knowing a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing that a tomato doesn't belong in a fruit salad. There's a difference. Knowledge is everywhere. Information and knowledge are readily accessible at this time in history more than any other. If you want to know how to cook a delicious meal, something you've never tasted before, there are countless videos available online at the touch of a screen. If you want to drive to a place you've never been and you do not know the way, there are devices that can give you knowledge of how to get there. Balancing budget, finding new books, building skills are only taps and swipes and keystrokes away. Information can help us do things, and do things right like never before. But wisdom is interested in something else. Wisdom does not focus on doing things right. It is concerned, rather, with doing the right thing. There is a difference, and it is an important one. The Magi came to Jerusalem because they saw changes in the heavens, and they knew that something had happened in the world. They traveled far from home to look for this little child who they thought would become a king. Along the way, they passed their knowledge on to Herod. But Herod perceived it as a threat to his power. Under the pretense of wanting to pay the child homage, Herod requested that the Magi return to him and tell them where the baby was. The Magi were in a difficult situation. They were visitors in the land. And no visitors in their right minds would purposefully try to cross the leader, to come into conflict with the king, especially a leader of such a bloody reputation as Herod. And yet, under pressure, they knew that they could not do what was expected of them. They could not behave rightly as visitors. Rather, they opened the doors of their hearts and found strength to do the right thing. They decided to travel home by a different way. And this decision was not the result of their understanding of the situation. It wasn't a calculated response, a weighing of options. Defying a powerful king was foolish. End of the story. They could not do things right. It was wisdom from beyond themselves, wisdom that came from God in a dream, that allowed them to see the truth of what was unfolding before them. A life of study and scholarship, a life of observation of the world alone did not make them wise. Rather, it was their ability to perceive a higher source of knowledge, a higher way This wisdom from a higher power brought them beyond doing things right, and it empowered them to do the right thing, laying down their safety for the sake of another. It is a harsh reality in our lives that doing things right is simply not enough. Doing things right is not enough to address the substantial problems our world faces, that our lives face day in and day out. Blind allegiance to information and knowledge and patterns can lead us down the wrong path. When King Herod learned of this newborn king in his land, he did things right. He wanted to eliminate the threat. He wanted to squash any challenges to his power. Herod did things right, and it pushed him down the path of great wrong. He used his power to hurt children. He did things right by one book and by one accounting. But he closed the doors of his heart and could not do the right thing. To do the right thing, we must have hearts open and eyes focused above and beyond the world of logic and rationality we build around ourselves. Wisdom is not a result of old age or having expertise about a certain subject. Wisdom endows us with the ability to make sound judgments and decisions using our knowledge for the greater good. This wisdom is elusive because it is not bound by information and knowledge alone. It is not woven into the fabric of who we are or evident in every circumstance. Because true wisdom comes from God. At times, this wisdom must even defy our intelligence and our sense of appropriateness. The Apostle Paul wrote that the message about the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing. But to those of us who are being saved, it is the power of God. In the wisdom of God, we are called to love our enemies. That doesn't make sense, but it is our calling. In the wisdom of God, the weak and lowly are lifted up, and the rich brought low. In the wisdom of God, every single person is worthy of dignity, respect, and love. None of these things are learned from an analysis of the situation or from knowledge. None of these things just spring out of who we are. None of these things is technically doing things right. And yet, as Christians, we are compelled by a higher calling, not to do things right, but to do the right thing. In the wisdom of God, we awaken to realities veiled by what we think we know. The only way to defeat our enemies is to love them. The only way to live in harmony is to honor the weak along with the strong. The only way to find life is to lay it down in service of others. It is a message of foolishness, to be sure. But in the glorious mystery of our faith, it is the wisdom of God. The Magi opened the doors of their hearts to wisdom beyond their understanding. How is God calling us to do the same today? How is God calling you to open the door of your heart? What are the decisions you must make between doing things right and doing the right thing? Are there people in your life that you want to push aside, to belittle, to write off? It's probably reasonable for you to want that. But is it right? Is it the right thing to push aside someone created in God's own image? Is there a part of yourself that makes you feel shame? Is there a part of yourself that you truly hate, that you would never want to admit to anyone else? It's probably reasonable for you to do that. But is it the right thing for you to hate part of yourself? Because you, like everyone else, are created in God's own image. How many tomatoes do we throw into the proverbial fruit salad of our lives because we cling on to what we think we know and our visions of how things ought to be, blind to the fact that it tastes terrible and makes us miserable? Life governed only by the answers we think we know about ourselves and about others is no life at all. What could our lives, our church, our community look like if we were not led by what we think we know about one another and what we think we know about ourselves, but we're led by the wisdom of God? This wisdom sees value and dignity in every person. Value and dignity in you. This wisdom sees the potential and promise in every circumstance. This wisdom says yes to love and no to every power that would diminish love. This wisdom has the power to do what is right. And this wisdom can be ours if we will open the door.